Jason Voorhees was never just a zombie. That was the lie sitting in front of everybody. He did not keep coming back because he was tough. He did not survive drowning, bullets, blades, fire, explosions, and death itself because he was built different. The real answer may be much darker. Jason Voorhees might be a Deadite, and once you see the proof hiding inside Jason Goes to Hell, the entire Friday the 13th franchise starts looking less like a slasher series and more like an Evil Dead curse wearing a hockey mask. The clue is not subtle. Inside the Voorhees house, the Necronomicon Ex Mortis is sitting right there, the same cursed book from Evil Dead. Not a random dusty book, not a cute background prop. The book. The one tied to demons, possession, resurrection, and dead things that do not stay dead. Then the movie goes even further. The Kandarian dagger, another Evil Dead artifact, becomes the weapon connected to Jason's defeat. So now the question changes. It is no longer, how does Jason keep surviving? The question becomes, who brought him back? That is where the theory gets nasty. Fans believe Pamela Voorhees may have used the Necronomicon after Jason drowned. A grieving mother, a dead son, a cursed book that should never be opened. That one idea explains almost everything. Jason does not just come back. He comes back wrong. He becomes stronger. He becomes harder to kill. He stops behaving like a man and starts behaving like something dragged out of hell with a machete in its hand. That is why bullets do not end him. That is why drowning does not end him. That is why his body keeps breaking the rules. Jason is not just undead. He may be demonically infected. And the craziest part is that this was not just fan imagination. Director Adam Marcus confirmed the Evil Dead connection was intentional. They could not legally say Jason was a Deadite because of rights issues, so they hid the answer in plain sight. The book, the dagger, the house, the curse, it was all there. This theory does not just connect two horror franchises. It solves the biggest Jason problem of all time. He was never only the drowned boy from Crystal Lake. He may have been a dead child resurrected by evil, turned into a walking curse, and sent back into the world as one of horror's most unstoppable, zombie-like monsters. Robert Neville was not the hero. He was the nightmare. The whole movie tricks you into standing beside him, watching him hunt the infected, test on them, kill them, and call it science. But the nastiest theory about I Am Legend says the Darkseekers were never just animals. They were thinking. They were learning. They were protecting each other. And Neville, the last normal man alive, was the monster they told stories about when the sun came up. The movie gives the game away if you stop treating the infected like cannon fodder. The Darkseekers set traps. They copy Neville's methods. They organize. The alpha male does not chase him just because he is hungry. He is trying to get back the female Neville captured. That flips the whole thing. Neville is not just some lonely scientist searching for a cure. To them, he is a kidnapper in a lab coat. He drags their people into his basement, experiments on them, kills them, and keeps telling himself he is saving the world. That is not hero behavior. That is boogeyman behavior with better lighting. The alternate ending proves it. Neville finally understands the Alpha is not mindless. He sees the drawings. He sees the connection. He sees that the infected have love, language, memory, and fear. Then the ugly truth lands. They are not monsters invading his world. He is the old monster refusing to leave theirs. That is why the title matters. I Am Legend does not mean he became a legend because he saved humanity. It means he became the thing a new species fears in the dark. The bedtime story. The warning. The killer who comes when you sleep. That is what makes this theory hit like a slap. The movie you thought you were watching is not the movie underneath. The hero was not hunting monsters, he was murdering the future. And the only reason the theatrical cut softened it is because audiences wanted a clean hero, not a man staring into the face of a new civilization and realizing he had been the villain the entire time. Those bodies near the vault were not random. They may have been the team. That is the creepy little sickness hiding inside Army of the Dead. You think you are watching a zombie heist. Guns, money, Vegas, dead people eating faces. Simple. Then the movie starts leaving corpses dressed like the main characters, and suddenly the whole thing feels less like a mission and more like a trap that has already killed them before. Vanderoe basically says the quiet part out loud. He looks at the dead bodies near the vault and starts wondering if they have been there before. Not people like them. Them. Different version, different loop, same stupid mission. That one thought poisons the whole movie. Every corpse becomes a warning. Every trap feels rehearsed. Every confident decision starts to look like another mistake they have already made 10 times. The team is not walking into a heist. They are walking into a rerun with teeth. The clues are nasty. Bodies wearing similar gear. A skeleton that appears to match Maria's necklace. Dead people placed exactly where failed versions of the crew would be. Even the vault layout feels off, like the blueprints are not telling the truth anymore. And then, Zack Snyder confirmed the theory had real support. He said the clues were intentional, and those dead bodies were placed to suggest previous failed attempts by the same characters. That changes everything. Army of the Dead stops being a loud zombie movie and turns into sci-fi purgatory. These people are not just unlucky, they may be damned. Trapped in a loop, sent back into Vegas again and again to chase money they will never escape with, dying in new ways while their old bodies rot on the floor as decoration. The zombies are bad, sure, but the real horror is worse. What if the mission already happened? What if they already failed? And what if the corpse they step over is just tomorrow's version of themselves? The rage virus was not created to make people violent. It was created to make them peaceful. That is the disgusting irony at the heart of 28 Days Later. The apocalypse did not start because someone wanted to build a monster. It started because someone tried to cure rage itself. They tried to reach inside the human brain, put a leash on aggression, and manufacture peace like it was a pill. Then the leash snapped. That is what makes the theory so much scarier than science made a virus. In the movie, activists break into a lab and release infected chimpanzees. The scientists scream that the animals are infected with rage, but the movie barely stops to explain why rage was being studied in the first place. The theory says the experiment was never meant to create rage, it was meant to stop it. Criminals, soldiers, violent populations, maybe even society itself. A drug that could remove anger, suppress aggression, and force people into obedience, not peace. Control wearing a white coat. The official 28 Days Later, the Aftermath comic, makes this even darker. It shows scientists working on a neurochemical designed to inhibit anger and create pacifism. But the experiment mutates. The thing meant to suppress violence becomes the purest violence imaginable. The cure becomes the infection. The hand trying to shut off rage accidentally turns it into a wildfire. That is why this origin feels so brutal. The world did not end because humanity loved violence too much. It ended because humanity got arrogant enough to think it could delete violence from the brain and not pay for it. They tried to create peace by force, and force created the rage. That is not just zombie horror. That is human nature punching back through the lab glass. Alice did not lose her memory. She may have never had one. That is the theory Resident Evil tried to hide under explosions, leather suits, and zombie dogs crashing through windows. At first, Alice looks like the classic amnesia hero. She wakes up confused, remembers nothing, and gets thrown into Umbrella's underground nightmare. Easy trick, simple setup. But then she starts moving like someone who was built, not trained. She fights too well, reacts too fast, survives too much. The T-virus does not ruin her body the way it ruins everyone else. It bonds with her. It makes her stronger. That is when fans started calling nonsense on the whole normal woman with memory loss thing. Alice was not just lucky. She was not just special. She was probably manufactured. A body designed to survive the virus, reset when needed, and dropped back into the machine like a weapon with skin. Then Resident Evil Extinction tears the mask off. A pit full of dead Alice clones. Not one Alice. Not one survivor. A whole pile of failed versions. Umbrella was not just studying her, they were making her, testing her, killing her, and making her again. Later movies confirm she is connected to Alicia Marcus, turning Alice into a clone of a real person. A copy built by the same corporate parasite she spends the franchise trying to destroy. That makes the amnesia twist feel less lazy and more rotten. She did not forget who she was. Umbrella stole the idea of who she was and printed it over and over. Alice becomes the ultimate zombie apocalypse revenge story. The corporation creates the monster, then the monster wakes up with a corporation and starts burning the corporation down. Umbrella did not just unleash the dead. It accidentally built the one woman who could make the dead look like the smaller problem. Some of the zombies in Vegas were not dead. They were machines. Let that sit there for a second. Army of the Dead already had enough going on. Alpha zombies, a zombie tiger, government cover-ups, a possible time loop. Then sharp-eyed viewers noticed a zombie get shot and spark blue electricity like somebody just hit a haunted toaster with a shotgun. That was not normal gore. That was metal, blue sparks, mechanical skull, glowing eyes that did not match the other infected. And suddenly the theory was born. The government government had robot zombies planted inside Las Vegas. Not undead victims, not infected civilians. Surveillance machines wearing zombie skin, walking around the quarantine zone and recording what was happening inside. Zack Snyder confirmed there are zombies in the film that are clearly not normal zombies. That one detail blows the doors open, because now the government is not just incompetent, they are dirty, they are watching. They may have been studying Zeus, the alpha zombies, the evolution of the Outbreak, and whatever the hell was really happening inside Vegas. The city was not just a quarantine zone, it was a test site. That makes the nuke feel different. Maybe they were not destroying Vegas because the Outbreak got too dangerous. Maybe they were destroying the evidence. Maybe the real monster was never the zombie king. Maybe it was the people in clean rooms watching dead bodies walk around with cameras behind their eyes. Robot zombies sound ridiculous until you realize what they mean. Somebody had time, money, access, and a reason to hide machines inside a city full of corpses. That is not a zombie outbreak. That is a government experiment that learned how to rot. The cabin in the woods almost had Left 4 Dead inside it, for real. Not kind of, not maybe, real. The monsters in that facility were not just background noise. Fans spotted creatures that looked like the witch and the boomer from Left 4 Dead sitting inside the containment system, like the movie had quietly trapped Valve's infected inside its nightmare zoo. At first, it looked like a fun Easter egg. Horror fans love that stuff. A wink, a prop, a little "we see you" moment. But the theory got bigger because the cabin in the woods is literally built for crossovers. The whole movie says every monster story is part of one giant machine. Werewolves, killers, ghosts, demons, zombies, puzzle boxes, nightmare clowns, all locked in one system to feed ancient gods. So if Left 4 Dead Infected were hiding in there, they were not just references, they were part of the machine. Then, Drew Goddard confirmed the truth. Valve and Lionsgate had worked on an actual crossover deal. Cabin in the Woods monsters were supposed to become Left 4 Dead DLC, and Left 4 Dead characters were supposed to appear in the movie. MGM's bankruptcy killed it at the last second, leaving the props and visual assets behind like evidence at a crime scene. That is why this theory feels so satisfying. Fans were not imagining the connection. They were seeing the remains of a crossover that almost happened. Corporate finance killed the official version, but the movie still has the fingerprints. Somewhere inside the cabin in the woods, the witch and the boomer were almost canon prisoners in the same system as every other horror monster. That is not an Easter egg. That is a dead crossover still twitching behind the glass. Walter White probably did not cook the zombie virus, but The Walking Dead wanted you to think about it. That is what makes this theory so addictive. It sounds stupid until the blue meth shows up. Then the Jesse reference shows up. Then the Heisenberg song shows up. At some point, coincidence starts sweating. In The Walking Dead, Daryl has Merle's drug bag, and sitting inside it is blue meth that looks way too close to Walter White's blue sky. That alone made fans lose their minds. Then Daryl later describes Merle's dealer as a janky little white guy who says, "I'm gonna kill you," which sounds like Jesse Pinkman wandered into the zombie apocalypse and kept being Jesse. Then Fear the Walking Dead plays Negro y Azul, the Ballad of Heisenberg, in a market scene. Now the theory has legs. Weird, twitchy, undead legs. The craziest version says Walter's meth caused the outbreak. That part is not confirmed. That is the radioactive fan theory version. But the connection between the shows was intentionally fed by the creative team. Fear the Walking Dead showrunner Dave Erickson confirmed they treated the references as a playful AMC universe nod. So no, we cannot say Heisenberg officially destroyed civilization with a bag of blue crystals. But we can say the shows were absolutely flirting with the idea. That is what makes it work. The meth theory may be too wild, but the shared universe tease is real. The blue meth was real. The song was real. The Jesse-coded dealer was real. AMC knew fans would connect the dots, then handed them more dots. So the real horror is not that Walter White caused the apocalypse. The real horror is that in some nasty little corner of television logic, Breaking Bad might be the world before the world went dead. Return of the Living Dead is not just making fun of Night of the Living Dead. It may be the cover-up coming back to bite everyone. The movie says it out loud and then keeps moving like it did not just drop a bomb. Frank tells the new guy that Night of the Living Dead was based on a true case. That one line turns the whole movie into something smarter, meaner, and way more twisted. In this universe, Romero's movie exists. People watched it. People think they understand zombies because of it. But the movie they watched was just the cleaned up version of something real. The government had trioxin barrels. The dead came back. The military buried the truth. Then some poor warehouse worker cracks the wrong container, and the cover-up starts breathing again. The best part is that the real zombies do not follow the movie rules. Shoot the brain? Doesn't work. Cut them apart? The pieces still move. Burn them? Congratulations, genius. Now the smoke spreads the infection. Return of the Living Dead punishes characters for thinking zombie movies taught them anything. They are not prepared. They are trained wrong. That is why this theory is so nasty. The characters are living in a world where zombie fiction exists because a real zombie event already happened. The movie inside the movie became public knowledge, but the actual truth stayed buried in a barrel. So when the outbreak returns, it does not feel random. It feels like the government's old sin leaked out through a crack in the floor. Return of the Living Dead is not just a spoof, it is a sequel to a lie. That is what makes it work. The meth theory may be too wild, but the shared universe tease is real. The blue meth was real. The song was real. The Jesse-coded dealer was real. AMC knew fans would connect the dots, then handed them more dots. So the real horror is not that Walter White caused the apocalypse. The real horror is that in some nasty little corner of television logic, Breaking Bad might be the world before the world went dead. Night of the Living Dead never needed to explain the apocalypse, and that is why it felt so real. Nobody had clean answers. Nobody had a neat villain. Nobody had a lab report. Just dead people walking, news anchors guessing, and survivors locking doors while the world rotted outside. But one theory kept coming back. The Venus probe did it. The movie mentions radiation from a returning Venus space probe as a possible cause. Not a confirmed answer, a broadcast theory, a panic explanation. The kind of thing people say when bodies are eating people and nobody wants to admit the world has stopped making sense. But fans latched onto it because it was too strange to ignore. Space radiation comes back to Earth, hits the brain, and the dead rise. That is pure old-school nightmare fuel. The written lore makes the theory stronger. The novelization by John Russo, who co-wrote the screenplay, gives the Venus probe explanation more weight. The Living Dead novel, started by Romero and finished by Daniel Kraus, also pushes the idea that the cause connects to the probe and its effect on the brain. So the thing that started as a shaky news report became the closest thing the franchise has to a real answer. And it is a perfect zombie origin because it feels stupid and terrifying at the same time. Humans reached into space, brought something back, and did not understand what came home with it. Not a monster, not an alien army, just radiation. Invisible and patient, crawling into the brain and turning death into a system failure. That is scarier than a clean explanation. The dead did not rise because hell got full. They rose because mankind opened a door in the sky and then acted surprised when something came through. Ed spoiled Shaun of the Dead while drunk, and most people laughed right past it. That is what makes this theory brilliant. In the opening stretch, Ed gives Shaun a lazy pub plan that sounds like nonsense from a guy who treats adulthood like a contagious disease. But that speech is not nonsense. It is the entire movie wearing a beer-stained disguise. He says Bloody Mary first thing. The first zombie they kill is Mary in the garden. He says a bite at the king's head. Shaun's stepdad Philip gets bitten in the neck. He says a couple at the Little Princess. Shaun picks up Liz and her couple friends, David and Diane. He says they will stagger back here. The group literally pretends to be zombies and staggers back to the Winchester. Then he says, back at the bar for shots. They end up behind the bar firing the Winchester rifle. That is not accidental. That is Edgar Wright being disgusting with structure in the best way. The whole movie is mapped out in a throwaway, drunk speech. It tells you everything, but it does it so casually your brain throws it away. Then the movie pays off every piece like a magician emptying your pockets after you already clapped. This theory hits because it proves Shaun of the Dead is not just funny. It is engineered like a trap. Every joke has a job. Every stupid line has teeth. Ed was not rambling. He was reading the movie's skeleton out loud. The apocalypse was already outlined. The warning was already spoken, and the audience missed it because the prophecy came from the least reliable man in the room. The zombie outbreak in Santa Clarita Diet may have been caused by corporate stupidity from another show. That is the kind of sentence that sounds fake until Viridian Dynamics walks into the room. Santa Clarita Diet already has a ridiculous setup. A suburban realtor eats infected Serbian clams and becomes undead. But then fans notice references to Viridian Dynamics, the evil company from Better Off Ted. That matters because both shows were created by Victor Fresco, and Viridian Dynamics is exactly the kind of company that would accidentally cause a zombie outbreak, then rename it Post-Life Consumer Disruption and hold a meeting about branding. This is not some normal background company. This is a corporate machine built on unethical experiments, weird science, and smiling through disasters like the lawsuit department has already been warned. Fresco confirmed the shared universe connection, which makes the theory hilarious and kind of perfect. Santa Clarita Diet stops being just a random zombie comedy and becomes another corporate experiment gone feral. Maybe the clams were contaminated, maybe something leaked, maybe Viridian tried to monetize eternal life and accidentally created a suburban cannibal problem. However it happened, the implication is clear. The undead may not have started with a curse. They may have started with a company that saw people eating people and asked if there was a subscription model. That is why this theory belongs. It is funny, but it also fits the zombie genre perfectly. Zombie outbreaks are always about systems failing. Governments fail, labs fail, corporations fail. People lie, hide evidence, and sell the problem back to the public. Santa Clarita Diet just makes that truth ridiculous. The apocalypse did not come from a graveyard. It came from a boardroom with bad ethics and worse seafood.